Hi everyone. So I'm waiting for another 2 minutes and then I will get started. I hope I'm audible. If I'm audible, you can flag your hands.
Okay, Deepak, just a quick thing for the students. Um, Guys, hey, this is Jatin Miglani. And just a quick thing before you get started this webinar session. So if you're using GoToWebinar panel very first time, just a quick thing. This webinar is a one-way communication. It is not a two-way communication. Normally, we have a two-way communication in the classes. But webinar, we keep it in one way because we heard a lot of noises are coming up. To reduce those noises, because sometimes what happens is students just unmute themselves and they forgot it. So just to avoid that, we kept this session as a one-way communication. So in case if you have any doubts or uh, any queries you have a question window. I hope you can able to see the question window on your control panel. So what you can do is you can just write down your questions and Deepak can able to answer all those queries and questions. So just be patient because I have seen more than 90 students join till now. So it's a huge number. So sometimes there will be a delay in answering your questions, but definitely all questions will be answered. If you understand this instructions, kindly say yes on a question window, please. Quickly. Wonderful. Yes. Great. Okay. Wonderful. That's very good. That's very perfect. I can see almost 20-25 years now. So I hope Deepak now you can take over this call.
Okay, thanks, Jatin. I will start with introduction. Uh, my name is Deepak Kumar Singh. I am a DevOps trainer and have around 15 years of experience in IT. I've worked with many multinational companies, right? I worked with Lance Communication, Radney, which is Optiva, Permatic, Persistent Systems, Volkswagen, right? These are various company I have so far worked on in my 15 years of uh, stint in IT industry. Meanwhile, when I have been through this, mostly I have dealt with a lot of tools, technologies to ease the process of releasing things or taking products to the market. And in all this context, I have gone through many processes and many changes which has come with respect to those processes during this journey of 15 years. Today, we are here to understand what is DevOps. So I will keep this question open for you because you are here to get the answer. But many of you were aware of this word and which is very popular nowadays. And this DevOps is getting imbibed in many organizations slowly and seamlessly. So first of all, I will try to make you understand why, and then we will jump into how. So to start with, I will talk about some models which are existing and people are still using, and then I will come to this DevOps model, and we will see why or how this DevOps model is perfect somewhere for certain, uh, you can say, products delivery line, how DevOps can ease and increase, you can say, in terms of deliveries, number of deliveries with minimal error. So I will use some annotation here and will try to understand from you also. I will ask question in between and you can use this question panel to put your question and discuss me. But remember, we are in webinar and in this process, lot of interaction cannot happen because I will not able to identify each and every question and able to answer them. Okay, so if you are aware of waterfall model, and in waterfall model of development, what happens basically, we need to understand few of the aspect first we have to start with a breed of people. Generally, we call business line people. Who are these people? Who are these business line people? These are basically decision makers, and this decision maker are actually bringing business or bringing some product which will generate revenue for a particular organization. So business line people could be a CTO of a company, an owner of a company, a business analyst of a company, okay, product manager of a company. So these are the breed of people, right? They will discuss, right, what is, right, they're good in market and what we should do to bring that feature or product in the market so that we can generate revenue. uh, in most of the cases, if you see, most of you have been part of product company, most of you have been product of service company. At the end, you are dealing with what, when and how you will reach the market, right, faster, how your delivery should go in this competitive market faster. In earlier days, generally we use a model called waterfall model, in which we have some, say, product idea, and in this product idea some business line people will write, actually let me take this annotation, right, pen here. So I will just write color, use blue color, right? So for example, there is some right idea, or I will write some product that you want to create, right? Some product that you are thinking of creating, and to this product idea has been conceived by business line people, and you thought of using you can say a model called waterfall model. So there would be a team which is working, right, in a development, right, for they will be actually working on developing the product. So there would be a different team, and there would be a team which will be working on some testing aspects, right? So they will be doing some testing over the product that has been built. Okay, so I'm just writing this annotation. I know the annotation here is bad, so but deal with this. uh, I think there's one question: is audio available? See, if I'm audible to you, that's fine, but I'm not able to hear you. So you have to bear with it. So you can put your question if you're not able to understand. I will, right, answer it, but try to be, right, more in what I am actually showing you, and then you can put your question accordingly. I told you there is a development team which could be geographically, right, separated also with the testing team in waterfall model. And there would be a testing team, there would be integration team, there would be you can say UAT team, and there could be operations team. So there are different teams which will be involved in, right, bringing a particular product to the market. So we will see in case of waterfall model what happens. Generally, this product manager, who is part of the business line people, will come up with a plan, or you can say the core planning will happen, in which it will decide how many developers we will need, how many testers we will need. So this resource planning will happen, and as per that, he will also decide how to break this product into certain modules, and I will put my developers to work on each module so that I can have some parallel development, and later on I can integrate it. So this is well conceived, and it's a good thought, right, in waterfall model also. So say I have in a product I have to build, say, 5 modules. So I am writing, say there are different 5 modules, right, which need to be developed. Okay, so say for example these are different modules need to be developed, and there is a timeline of, you can say, 5 weeks, right? Basically there are 5 weeks in which I have to complete the development task. And this may happen in waterfall module. A developer which is associated for this module, particular module, completed, right, this in 1 week. The module completed in 1 week, but this module had taken more than, right, 5 weeks. So say it took 6 weeks to complete. There's another module which completed in, say, 4 weeks, and there's certain module which completed in 3 weeks. So what is happening here? So the problem which I can see here is there is a loss of man days. So loss of man days in what term? For example, this guy who completed this particular module, completed the module in 1 week, right? The product manager will think of using this particular developer who is working this module to another module. But it is not always the case. It depends upon person to person, right? एक बंदा अगर चाहता है कि वो किसी को इन टर्म्स ऑफ प्रोडक्ट हेल्प करे, वो उसका पर्सनल कॉल है, if you think in that way. So it doesn't always work. Basically, if you see the human thought process, right, it doesn't always work. He will think, I have completed my module. Whenever another task will come, maybe right for that module, in case of some bug failures, or I will get involved, my work is done. That kind of thought process could be there with individual. This is individual thing you cannot do. So obviously in such case there are high chances this particular gap in human resources availability will lead into increase in delivery time. So time taken to release a product is getting affected here. So what we call is time to market. So this time to market is affected, which is very visible in waterfall model. Now, once a module has been created, it is created after say 6 or 7 weeks, though we had targeted for 5 weeks, but due to different challenges, it took 6-7 weeks. And then I thought my module has been created, so I want to do some integration before taking it to actual functional testing. This is one of the most painful phase when you do integration testing. And remember, development team is a different team, integration team is a different team, and testing team is a different team. Here there will be to and fro communication will happen, which will also lead into some addition into time to market. And remember this word when I'm always talking about this time to market, because this is very important understanding the DevOps basically. Things which can be improved in waterfall model for to fro communication, we can implement what a process to resolve that problem. So I can bring some automation here. So automation in terms of what, I will do continuous integration, I will do some continuous delivery in my waterfall model. In that way, maybe I can reduce this to and fro communication. So whenever develop commit, right, after building all the models, if commit, it will go to the integration phase, and this continuous integration tools will catch that error and communicate to each and every stakeholder. Rather than in earlier days, what happened, integration tester will take all those build, try to manually build them, and we'll see if everything is good or not. If it is bad, they will check 2 times more. Maybe they want to confirm themselves whether this is wrong or right. Once they are very sure, then they will communicate to developer. This takes time, this behavior takes time, this is a human behavior which will take time. And again, there could be back and forth communication, which will again lead to increase in time to market. Now think about when we are talking about time to market and automation, think about if we don't have an automation in place here, CI is not there, it is adding a time. Again, after integration, it will be deployed into test environment, right? In this test environment, and if it is manual, if your product have around thousands of test cases, what will happen? It will take some amount of window. Therefore, if you see this model works in a very long window. Basically, when there is a fixed time and money project, we look for this waterfall model. So there is nothing about this model, but there are certain flaws, right, in a competitive market which will not work. So in this case, if my test cases are not automated, so obviously I need a longer window for testing, which will result or delay into time to market. This is one of the important thing where we need this functional testing need to be automated to reduce that time. So this is again one of the challenge where I can imbibe this continuous testing inside waterfall model also. This is a possibility. It is nothing like that I cannot do that in waterfall model, but there are challenges because it has its own window. The approach would be that way. Now after testing, there would be again staging testing, which generally we call it a UAT level testing, which is done on stage environment. Can anyone tell me what is stage environment? Stage environment testing is near to prod testing. A user is acting like a customer, and it will be doing near to production user data, and it will keep some important use cases. So whatever bugs which come in UAT has a higher priority. Maybe in terms of severity also, it will be taken care. If it's a high priority and severity, obviously this need to be right resolved, and then we have to move ahead. Now, another thing that we have to see in waterfall model, if some integration test failures happen, it will again go to development, and again this process of development will happen. And this is what I'm actually terming an back and forth, which may have a multiple n number of cycle of development with gap in communication happen, and which will actually result into some bigger issues later. So this I'm entirely talking when we are talking all the things which are happening inside what a development stakeholder. So I will call a UAT tester, integration engineer, or developer as a part of development stakeholder. Right now I have not involved operation at all. Now think about once your everything is done, UAT is also very good. So what will happen? You are ready to release your product into the market, and who is going to release? Who are the owner of product infrastructure or production infrastructure? The operations guy. Can anyone tell me what is the main responsibility of an operation, or you can say infrastructure engineer or operation engineer? What is the main responsibility of infrastructure engineer? Anyone? So let me give you a hint, and I want to see right who can use this hint to give me a correct answer. It is related to uptime, but what uptime? This is one of the tasks. Setup of environment is one of the tasks. I need whenever yes, someone said to ensure zero downtime. So I will interpret it in this way. Uptime should be 99.99959 basically. This is what right in interview generally they will ask, and if you able to answer that, this is the main responsibility, because your revenue is coming from the users who are using your product. And if you do not give them right a zero downtime kind of stuff, right, basically then they are going to be erratic and your product will not work in the market. And this is what their main responsibility. Obviously to keep this up, they have to do various tasks. They have n number of tasks to do: patching, vulnerability checks, monitoring of application environment setup, check whether all the environments are working smooth. So there are many other things operation engineer need to take, even to automate the footprints of infrastructure, limit the infrastructure with, so that you should not cost much while giving your product to the customer. So with all this, when something like deployment task to come to operation, they always take them as an ad hoc task, though there is main responsibility because they are the owner of production environment. They only can do deployment if I'm talking about waterfall model. So there is kind of a trust issue, which is again very important keyword in terms of understanding DevOps. So we have seen few keywords. The first keyword was what? Time to market. Second keyword was automation. And the third keyword that we are talking about is time to, not time to market, it is what? Trust issue. So why I'm talking about this trust issue and how this trust issue is affecting your deliveries? Can anyone tell me? When I was talking here, when two teams are geographically separated and they are working as a two different team, a lot of back forth communication happen. The communication sometimes doesn't happen very smooth, and this communication which doesn't happen smooth leads into misunderstandings, and this misunderstanding result into deployment failures or bad deployments. If you see a person who is aware of a product and he's also doing deployment of that product, obviously he will be more responsible and the ownership with him would be higher, and obviously he will understand what and what when can go wrong with that particular product. This is one of the major intent that you have to look into when you are thinking about DevOps. Okay, So this is one thing that I talked about waterfall model. Let me erase all drawings here, right, and jump into another model. And now this model, I will talk about agile methodology. I hope everyone here is aware of agile methodology, correct? Now I will use certain jargons around this agile methodology, and I want to just understand from you what you know. Can anyone tell me what is epic? What is epic in agile? So epic could be a product idea requirement. I agree with you, but let me break it down. Epic is a very important or a bigger picture of what you're going to develop. A product could be an epic that you are going to build. A project example, it could be a particular feature in a product which is, right, very important and very big feature. So that feature is also a epic. Even a bug which is very important, for customer, and it will take some effort to resolve that bug in terms of changing something in your product, could be also epic. No, task is something different. I will come to that. But epic is nothing but a product, a feature, or could be a bug which can be treated as epic because it has a lot of effort, because that bug will result into some feature, change in some product, right? That is what you have to keep in mind. Now we know about epic. Okay, now through this epic we can break down into what called backlogs. Can anyone tell me what is backlog? So how to perform a particular implementation of a project or requirement, I will break down that particular epic into multiple stories, sub stories, tasks, spikes. I'm using various other words like spikes, subtasks, tasks, stories, sub stories. So obviously, yes, someone said features that need to be developed. Yes, these features are nothing but stories that we are going to uh, break down this epic. So obviously our backlog is very important. Now through this backlog, what I'm going to do? So obviously I will do first grooming. Can anyone tell me what grooming could be? So grooming would be, what are my priorities? So building a particular feature, what are the features that I will take in a particular sprint to complete so I can move ahead to completion of entire epic. So in a backlog with the senior stakeholders here, I will say in basically grooming, it doesn't take all the lower bracket resources, but it talks about team lead and above. They will come together, product manager, architect, they will come and they will decide we should complete this set of stories from backlog so that we are in some position, and then we will talk about the next sprint if we achieve this. So grooming is segregation, setting up priorities of the task. And after grooming, there is another thing happen called sprint planning. Okay, so sprint planning is what? From the groomed items, with all the stakeholders, with all the resources who are a part of a team, which involves what? Developer, testers, integration engineers with multiple capabilities. A particular developer can work as a tester also. There are different approaches of testing, BDD, TDD, right? Different approaches of testing. So a team which is capable of doing, right, all the tasks. So they will come together, they will discuss about sprint groomed items, and they will see who can take what features. For development, it could be related to some support activity also. So many other things in, right, there are multiple tasks which could be broken down to it. Not only development, testing could be one of the activity, right, which could be one story out there. Operation stuff could be one of the story. Maybe you are supporting a particular application being in a team, and whatever customers feedbacks are coming, you are implementing them in that story. That could be part of the sprint planning. Now The important factor here is resources bandwidth. In a team, if everyone is available for 2 weeks, so ideal sprint timing is what? 2 weeks. So 2 weeks, so total 10 days. And in 10 days, they will see who are available for what time. Maybe there are people who are in leave. So a person who can do that story is not available maybe. So obviously it will affect what? Grooming. Sprint planning will definitely affect grooming. Actual picture comes in sprint planning. And as per the task allocation happen, else some of the tasks may spill over to backlog, and tasks which are allocated needs to be completed within the sprint. And it is two things can happen. It can be completed, it cannot be completed. So for this situation, something is very useful which happens is called stand-ups. So anyone know what stand-ups is? Nothing. It's meeting regularly. रोज आके एक दूसरे को हाय बोलना, right? Something like that. But more important, talk about what you are doing, and in one or two lines, either there are no blockers or there are blockers, and talk about that blocker so everyone is aware. It's not about to discuss very elaborately about your blocker or what you are building, about your feature that you are developing. You need not to talk much about that. But yes, impediments is the correct word. Sushant used the correct word. We talk about that, and we jump into work, and the person who's aware of certain blocker may jump to you and tell you, yes, this could be the solution, and he would be much interested to know why this blocker is coming. So obviously this will help in terms of information sharing with the team, and team can help each other. The stand-ups generally help team in terms of propagating toward actual goal. Now, after stand up and you complete your sprint, something which is very important happens is called retrospective. You know, what is retrospective, guys? Why we need retrospective? ओके क्या अच्छा हुआ है वही बात करेंगे. सो यहाँ पे दोनों चीज होते हैं. यहाँ पे एक्चुअली देखा जाए तो इसके क्वाड्रेंट्स होते हैं, 4 क्वाड्रेंट्स होते हैं. तो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, क्या अच्छा हुआ, क्या अच्छा हुआ जिसको कंटिन्यू रखना चाहिए, क्या अच्छा नहीं हुआ, और क्या है जो हमें नहीं करना चाहिए. राइट. तो ये 4 क्वाड्रेंट्स में लोग आपस में डिस्कस करते हैं और पॉइंट्स डालते हैं. इट्स नॉट ओनली अबाउट क्या अच्छा हुआ और क्या बुरा हुआ. Right, though these are also good things, right? These are also feedbacks, but generally it should be taken into 4 quadrants, and each quadrants are going to be have someone you can say accountable in terms of bringing them. It is not about blaming game. Generally, if retrospective is going in that way in your team, that someone is using it for blaming and all that, then yes, something wrong with the team. The team is not very gelled up. तो यहाँ पे आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं कि ये टास्क क्यों नहीं हुआ, व्हाट आर द रीजंस, क्या क्या होता तो सही होना चाहिए था, और एक एक्शन आइटम जनरेट होता है. उस एक्शन आइटम पे वर्क करते हैं कि अगली बार उस पे इम्प्रूवमेंट आ जाए. राइट, दैट इज द मेन थिंग. एंड यस, एप्रिसिएशन ऑलवेज वर्क. कुछ अच्छा कर रहे हो और अगर उसका एप्रिसिएशन नहीं हो रहा है तो ऑब्वियसली वी डोंट फील गुड, राइट. तो ऑब्वियसली एप्रिसिएशन होना चाहिए और वो टीम से आना चाहिए. तो दिस इज व्हाट रेट्रोस्पेक्टिव हैपेंस, एंड व्हाट एक्चुअली रेट्रोस्पेक्टिव हेल्प्स इन understanding the velocity also. So when you know about what is going wrong, then as per that you plan, and maybe the velocity of your sprint need to be reduced, or you can say pacified, is decided on that. And obviously your sprint dashboards and everything will give you a clear picture about that. Now, first of all, why I'm talking about this at all? I'm talking about, now you see the different approach from waterfall model. Here we're working on sprint. There are nothing like one developer associated with one module for 5 weeks or 6 weeks. So iterative development has come into picture here, and someone is, right, in a way a process is monitoring whether you are busy or not, right? Some kind of resource managing is happening, and this is how things work. Everyone has some work, everyone identify that yes, he is valued in terms of learning, in terms of defining what he is doing is well defined. तो ये जो एक रिसोर्स 2 वीक करके खाली बैठा हुआ वो सिचुएशन एजाइल मेथोडोलॉजी में नहीं हो सकता. That is what the good thing about this. And another thing which is good, the development stakeholder communication and trust issue is improved. Developer is not a different team, tester is not a different team, they are part of a single team. Okay, so that's what another benefit here. But the problem or challenge related to operation is still intact. It's still there, right? It is not totally changed. Operation is still a different team. They are very less involved into all those ceremonies of sprint. And here again, this trust issue is on very higher side. Though there is some improvement in time to market, but trust issue is again on the higher side. And this is what somewhere some process creator would be thinking on the small things and want to improve on it. Now, I will take one example. Let me click here. It is all drawing and click somewhere else. Just I want to. Okay. Now I will talk about few important thing, right? So now I'm talking about pillars of DevOps. Can anyone give me some or can guess what could be the pillars of DevOps? Anyone? So the first one and very important one is what? Communication. Second is collaboration. Third is integration. And the fourth and very important, someone pointed, Rohan pointed, is automation. These are the four pillars of DevOps. If something is missing in this four thing, you are not actually practicing DevOps. Now I will come one by one why I'm talking about, and we had taken some information while discussing those models. Communication challenge was there in waterfall model. Each team is separate team and they had to communicate what they had done, and the way the communication will pass to developer will go through different channel, and thing will happen what will break at certain point. Communication A will turn into communication D at the end, which will result into breakage or broken deployment. And generally you see it happens when your you can say production support guy is not aware of configurations that you are using in your production environment that you have not shared as a developer or a tester. He will use what you have passed in some configuration file, and you have not communicated what to change. Obviously deployment will fail and it will release into dissatisfactions at various levels. Okay, now we had already various communication channel to use. Now nowadays if you see there is different so what we are doing right now, like a go to webinar is nothing but a communication channel where I am passing some information of DevOps to you, and most of here would be will get aware of certain fundamentals of DevOps in from this session. Very basic fundamentals you will definitely acquainted with. If you see Jira, Confluence, communicators, various communicators, Slack, HipChat, IRC channels for the release, these are nothing but communication channel. If you are not defining this communication channel, you are missing out DevOps. DevOps is not implemented. I'm talking very basic, but it's very important. Collaboration क्या है? Collaboration ये है कि हर कोई एक जैसा नहीं हो सकता, right? एक डेवलपर है जिसका डेवलपर फ्रेमवर्क ऑफ माइंड है, राइट? एक डेवलपर ऐसा भी हो सकता है जिसका ऑपरेशन फ्रंट में ज्यादा दिमाग चलता है, राइट? ही कैन डू दैट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर मैनेजमेंट वेरी वेल और डेवलप इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर वेरी वेल. So if a team had a combination of different resources and if they are sharing with them, will result into what? A team which knows very much, right? Which are capable of doing very much. A typical example, I know about defining networks. So I can architect different networks over cloud or in-premise cloud. I am very capable in terms of understanding, but I don't know how to code in a coded way to implement it. And if in my team someone is aware of certain infrastructure as a code thing, I would be happy to learn from him. And if he collaborates, obviously I will get learned and I can use it later, right? So I would become also capable. That is what collaboration in a very simple way. Another way, एक ऑपरेशन का गाय जो कि सिर्फ सेट ऑफ सीक्वेंस ऑफ कमांड रन करता है प्रोडक्ट के बारे में, बट उसको प्रोडक्ट का नॉलेज बिल्कुल नहीं है. If someone passes that product knowledge, his efficiency in managing that product would be higher than what he was doing earlier. सही है. ये जो चीजें है ये भी एक तरह के कोलैबोरेशन. टीम यूजेस वेरियस वे nowadays to do collaboration. And if you see, knowledge collaborations are happening through LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, recording your team meetings, sharing with the team, having meetings regularly, recording those meetings. These are nothing but collaboration. And including all the stakeholders together. A developer who can work as an operation, right, is part of a team. Operations who can work as a developer is part of a team. And when I'm using this word, right, developer as operation, operation as a developer, there is a meaning behind it. So DevOps treat everyone capable of doing both the things. That is what which is very important. You have to understand that. Okay. Now I will come to integration, and for integration I will take you to one of my slide to explain you generally in terms of to understand. Here we have to understand what is continuous integration, what is continuous delivery, and what is continuous deployment. Can anyone tell me the difference between these three terminology? Continuous integration, delivery, and deployment. Anyone? Okay, so let me first define continuous integration. So continuous integration means if in a day, if you're committing a code n times, it should build using that code n times. That building of the code should happen n times automated way. For example, I want to deploy a web application to my test environment. So I need to do what? My code need to be compiled and packaged as a var and should be deployed into some container. So it should happen in that way. If I commit, it should be deployed. The var should be created automatically and should be deployed into test environment. And it should happen if I do those changes and commit n times in a day. I do not need to do everything manually. For example, first write code, take my code to my development environment, then go to my code folder, then write some small script or download certain libraries which are important to build my you can say classes or compile them. So I will do manually compile the classes, create classes, then manually run a command to package them. And once it is packaged, I will ask some tester, this is the folder where I kept my jar, please copy it. He will also manually copy. So this is not continuous integration. It is completely manual step. So obviously when you are committing a code, whether in a feature branch or a master branch or a release branch, right, an activity of, or you can say automation of build development lifecycle should happen automatically, and you should get your releasable, or you can say artifacts, which are test artifacts or releasable artifacts should be created and can be used. That is what continuous integration is. Then what is continuous delivery? And what is continuous deployment? So to be continuous delivery compliant, I should have continuous integration in first. So typical thought process in terms of development lifecycle is what? It is something like a queue where I take requirements, I do code, I do test, I do deploy, I do monitor, and then right again requirement comes, and again this cycle goes on, right? Look it, see it like a circle basically. So what happens if I do code, means I'm committing my code, automatically I should be capable of doing that testing. So this part including code test will include what? Continuous integration plus continuous testing. So once you committed your code has been builded and your test execution has happened. So that is what continuous testing is. And then once it is tested, it is staged to different environment. First, it will go to UAT stage. It will again automated tested out there. And once your staging testing is done, generally what happens? You do not deploy directly in production. That's true, right? So obviously stops cycle वहां पे रुक जाता है थोड़ी देर के लिए, and then some manual intervention happens, and with all the approvals which comes, and then you do what? One click deployment. So if you do this entire thing, actually you are continuous delivery. So once you commit a code, you are ready for deployment with a one click deployment. That is what continuous delivery is. In some organization, even it do the deployments, but what about approval? If there is no approval, then you are wrong. You are not continuous delivery, right? Approval is must. And when this process of approval is also automated, then you are continuously deployment. You're doing what? Continuous deployment. And that is the difference between continuous delivery and deployment. Continuous delivery subsets are continuous deployment and continuous integration, continuous testing, continuous monitoring. These are part or subset of continuous delivery. So this is what you have to keep in mind. Okay. Now, if I show you that diagrammatically, right? Let me jump into my project here, right? Yep. Okay. So let me show you this PPT. Okay. Now, see, this is typical continuous integration workflow. Okay. So, okay, these monkeys are nothing but developers. They always do something, right? Create bugs, do some mischiefs. Okay. So obviously, developers are doing some coding and they are committing this code. And once they commit, either this code repository will trigger a job into continuous build system. Okay. And this continuous build system will create all test report and executable package. Let me minimize it here, right? And obviously this will go to artifact repository like Naxos, or you might have heard about this all terminology like Naxos, Maven, right? Jenkins. These are actually right not written in this picture, but yes, they do exist here. So continuous build system is nothing but Jenkins, a TeamCity, a Bamboo, right? You can call any such systems as a continuous build system. They're capable of generating test results. They're capable of integrating with any artifact repository. And using this artifact repository or continuous build system, you can do all the deployments in any environment, whether it's a dev stage or prod environment, you should be capable. And here, there are certain hidden things. There are configuration management tools, right? CMTs, which actually sits between continuous build system and deployment. That is also very important for provisioning your infrastructure, for doing deployment in n number of servers and doing in a very meaningful way. So this part where developers do a code and this code has been committed and deployed in artifact repository, then this is a CI workflow. This is a continuous integration workflow. And if you say in terms of Jenkins, the same diagram turns up like this. So obviously continuous build system is changed with what? Jenkins, where Jenkins actually fitting in as a continuous build system, which helps in doing continuous integration. Hope this part is clear, and you can see this integration which I was talking about, how much important that particular integration is. Without integration, basically you're not capable of doing releases in an automated way, that I will say. And why automation? Can anyone tell me why automation is very important? Okay, let take me in this point. If you go through the entry point for DevOps, correct, reduce manual interaction, and if you want to do everything in an automated manner, the entry point which is decided to enter into DevOps is some or minimal a programming language you should be aware of. A scripting language is a must, I would say. You should aware of Python, you should aware of Shell. Some knowledge of programming is very important. You'll end up in any DevOps job, you will have to deal with it nowadays. There is no escape from that. And that is what actually I am seeing, being in this 15 years of career. And now when I'm dealing with my DevOps engineering team, I see there is a lack of that part of knowledge. They are very much aware of tools, but they are not aware of scriptings, and this scripting actually blocks them. And this is the skill which need to be learned. And this skill, if you learn in DevOps, basically you will grow in a career path in a very good way. So you have to understand why this automation is very important. If you see, I'm talking about integration, what's happening actually there? In Jenkins, when you're writing a job, basically you're doing some automation. And this automation has made it easy for you so that you don't need to learn much programming. You have to fill a form, but somewhere in that form, you have to write a code. A shell script need to be embedded in that code. Somewhere you have to do some automation in Python code to achieve something so that your integration should work. So gluing is again a very important stuff, which is very important while making your career in DevOps. So this all are very important. And yes, if I summarize the definition of DevOps, it is something like reducing time to market plus reducing trust issue. This can be done. Okay, this can be done by increasing new skill sets, increasing or learning, you can say. Uh, mm, mm, you can say, I don't know why. Okay, okay, increasing learning new technologies, learning new technologies plus tools. So if you are doing this, basically when you are increasing your new skill sets in terms of process methodologies, right? You can say something like that you are knowing about networks and everything. So you're learning new skills, and how you're learning them, learning some new technologies. Like for example, you are including Jenkins in your profile, you are including a build tool in your profile, you are including some configuration management tool like Ansible, Chef, CloudFormation, uh, in your stack, some virtualization knowledge like Docker, Kubernetes platform like Kubernetes in your skill set, right? Learning the technology behind them. Then this knowledge will reduce those friction in trust issue within the team, because you will share them, you will collaborate them, communicate them, and obviously with this knowledge you will have a proper pipelines created for your project, and which will actually reduce the timeline of delivery in the project. So this is what DevOps is, and DevOps imbibe everything good from any other process. And a team, when we call about a DevOps, it compromises of what? Compromises of both the skill set, operations and developer. And the roles, if you talk about, so the popular role as a DevOps engineer, a DevOps developer role could be there, a DevOps test engineer could be there, a DevOps test in automation engineer could be there. So these are the various roles, right, that DevOps supports nowadays, and it is booming up in the market, and it's the right time to fall in, jump in, and grab the opportunity which is coming because of DevOps market. And if you see the combination of AWS with DevOps is actually killing the market nowadays. Go anywhere, you will see the ratio of AWS and DevOps in the job skill set requirement is much, right? If you see someone looks for an AWS professional with having some integration or continuous integration or delivery knowledge, some with some programming skills in Python or shell script. So this is what, right, I'm talking about. And about course, let me take you to my folder, which I was actually showing you, right? So what I actually teach, what are the different tools and technologies which I teach? So I starts with scripting, which is an entry point. So I start with shell scripting, and if you see, I do not start, though I'm going to teach you advanced shell scripting, but I took in cognizance because many students are looking into, or you can say lack in terms of scripting knowledge. So someone is asking tools in DevOps. So these are the various tools that I'm going to talk about now, right? You will see the list of tools that I'm going to talk about. So if you see my handouts, it starts from very basics, right? So if you see, this is the very basic out of the very first session where I want to take you at you should be aware why you are using Unix operating system, basically, right? Why are you using that Unix operating system? So you should have basic knowledge about this stuff. Then we should jump into some important stuffs. So if you see this PPT, and there is nothing like PPT kind of study I do. It's all practical. Each and everyone is going to do hands-on, able to write scripts, everything. So yeah, teaching with DevOps. Yes, I'm going to teach this. I am going to teach on AWS, this entire DevOps, right? So we will be using AWS. So these are various topics that I'm going to cover. Okay, this file permission I will start with, and then jump into operators, right? And then I will jump to decision logic. Then I will jump to loops. Then I will jump to this process management, IO redirection, regular expression, grab, sed, right? And this all we are going to learn, right? Which I'm actually showing you here. And remember, all right, I will bring that expertise in you, right? Where you will not afraid of writing any problem statement in Shell script. This is what actually I want you should be aware, and you will see if you bring that change in your profile how much comfortable you will become in your actual day-to-day regular job. You have to understand that and the importance of this, because it's an entry point. After Unix shell scripting, I also teach Python, the basics of Python. I don't get into very depth Python. My important motive, so that you should be able to read and make some amendments in the Python scripts. For example, some of your deployment script is using some deployer.py script. You should be able to learn what modules are, how modules are imported, right? What are string, what are variables, or different kind of variables, data structure point of view. So these are the basic thing that I'm going to give you, where we are going to write some Python program, execute them, and understand the concept of module in Python. So this is what you are going to learn in Python. So this is very important, and I therefore write I had implemented in such a way. If you're not basically, and you are just interested in tools and you're not learning this basic thing, then some way or other way your profile is not complete. It is incomplete, I would say. Okay. Uh, Once we are done with this, we jump into AWS basics. So in AWS basics, I will talk about the basic concept. So you should be aware what regions are, what availability zones are, how a three-tier application architecture look like. We will talk about various services, like what are compute services, what are storage services. So I'm again here in AWS, I'm not going to go in that. So there are various other courses for that. But for me to complete my labs of different tools in AWS environment, if you are not aware of that, then you are not able to understand that. For example, I will ask you to install Apache Tomcat instance in one of EC2 instance, and I want change the port and add it in security group. But if you're not aware of fundamentals of security group and NACL, then who's going to help you? So obviously this session is going to help you. So this session will talk about all different aspects, and here also we are going to do one important lab where we will be building a serverless page application which will be using these different services. So we are here going to use a Lambda as a compute, API gateway, S3, and Route 53 knowledge, which is required, right? A user would be requesting a static page which is there in S3, and we will be writing a Python code, right, which will be triggering through API gateway, and will be executing the Python 3 code, which will execute and give a response to the user. So this is what lab that we are going to do, right? So in this way, we had planned everything. It would be an hands-on activity from shell script, from Python, from Ruby, from AWS. Everything would be hands-on. After this AWS basics, we will jump into this Git. In Git, this is again a basic necessity. Wherever you go, you have to use, right, this basic knowledge. around you can say committing, storing your code. Even if you are an operation engineer, if you're writing infrastructure code, you will commit or you will create a repo and store your artifacts, code artifacts in those repo. So this is important. So my here instance is, first you should be start as a beginner. So in beginner, you should aware of right how to install Git, and then how to create a local repository, fundamentals around a local repository. So concepts like, what is the difference between a physical directory and a repo? What is an untracked directory? What is a tracking stage? What is a staging stage? Why git diff work on staging stage or tracking stage? What happens when you create a file, where it goes, why it is an untracked stage? So this kind of conceptual knowledge is also required. Why we learn git, why not svn? What is the difference between them? So this all would be captured right here. And here we will learn about basic flow. Our first commit we will do, and then we will jump into remote repo. In remote repo, we are going to create our GitHub account. We will be creating a report, cloning them, and then right we will be actually checking whether we can communicate with remote repo or not. Then we will create a code. We will push that changes to the remote machine. So in your day-to-day activity, what you are going to do will be covered in the beginners part. Okay. Here also we have to understand the concept of this common workflow or branching strategy. So branching strategy in terms of what you have to understand, why feature branches are, why you have to create feature branch, what is branch testing, what is release branch, why you have to do regression testing in release branch, how feature branches are merged to release branch, why we do not directly merge to master branch, what is the reason behind having a master branch. This is a various important aspect that you have to take care. So obviously this is very important, how to delete a branch, and this again very important concept, merge versus rebase. So this is also we are going to learn in this basic session. After that, we have fixing common mistakes. As a operation engineer, as a developer, you tend to make common mistakes. For example, you check out you write a garbage code and you didn't like, you wrote some logic but you didn't like, you want to go back to the original state. How you will go? You did the code in a wrong branch. How you will do it? What is cherry picking? How to append wrong committed messages? How to do reset? What are the different type of reset and their meaning? Soft, mixed, and hard reset. Why are they? So how resets help? How to get rid of untracked file? If you've done a hard reset where you lost your code, how to recover from it? What is git revert? How it is different than reset? And very important, what is stashing? Rather than creating multiple branches, how I can work with a different logic in a same branch? So the stashing concept comes into picture. So someone asked knowledge of Linux OS. So uh, when you learn shell scripting itself in Linux-based operating system, most of the knowledge will you will acquire there in terms of certain command level knowledge that you need to learn while doing shell scripting. There are certain exercises that will build you in terms of learning. And second, when you are going to do lab, for example, when I will ask you to install Java and tweak the parameters or configure in terms of operating system, maybe then at that time you will learn about those integrations. This will come with each tools that you are going to learn. For example, for SonarQube installation, the file descriptors need to be changed, where you are going to change, where what is sysctl file in operating system. This all are covered, so don't worry about that. Okay, now I will jump to another after git, right? So see, if the flow is also in that way, the diagram that I have showed you in Jenkins. So first we are doing some coding, we are going to commit that code into, and as per that commit, our artifact should be built. For that we need to understand first Maven. So there would be, you can say, 2-hour session on Maven, where we are going to learn this build tool. And this build tool not in terms of just understanding how to run commands. It is not the actual intention here. So first of all, you have to understand different build life cycles. What is default build life cycle? What are the phases in default build life cycle? Okay. What is documentation in build tools? What is cleaning of cache in build tools? These are also part of build life cycle. So phases like validation of code, compiling of code, unit testing of code, packaging of code, installing locally of a code, and deploying of a code in Artifact. So these are different phases. And in total, there are 10 phases, including all the 3 life cycles in Maven that we are going to understand. We are going to execute this lab. We are going to install Java first, then we are going to install Maven first in Linux environment. Then we are going to create running this command, right? We are going to create a sample Maven project, which will be created by this above command. Then we have to understand what our sample code is. For example, here again, you need not need to be very good in Java. This Java app.java is a code, is a print hello world code, which is auto generated for learning point of view. So you need to understand why this my company app come, right? Why this folder structure source and test come. What is this pom.xml? How this DSL XML is used by Maven? What are the definition in POM? Why POM is very important? So you need to know the definition of group ID, artifact ID, versioning, packaging, dependencies, distribution management, plugin. There are various other tags that we will talk about. So this is again very important to be worked with a DevOps engineer. Somewhere or other way you have to use in some project. They are using Maven as a build tool. And learning one build tool make you capable of understanding any other tool like Gradle, Camel. Okay, and we are going to basically run this package command. This is one of the phase that I'm calling, which is a package phase, which is written here. But we are going to learn first diagrammatically. I will write design or draw a diagram to understand how a user commit a code and how Maven goes to the central repository or of a local repository to do the validation or bringing all the libraries, and then using those library of code is built, and then all the compilation happens and packaging happens. This is what we are going to understand. Okay, so after learning Maven, we will jump into Jenkins. So we need to understand Jenkins, how as a web application it worked, why it is a serverlet based web application, and then we have to understand how to install Jenkins, and there are various labs that we are going to do. So first we are going to use a Maven project, then a pipeline project, a freestyle project with a Tomcat integration, and then there is a Docker implementation with a Jenkins lab, and there two lab that you have to do, that is the master slave integration. For that I will give you a proper knowledge how to do it, but this is you have to do yourself, and everything else is class labs. So everything will happen in class in which we are doing some hands-on. Without laptop, I would say there is no need to do DevOps. So you have to have system with you where you have to execute things. And one this Nexus Sonar type installation, and one is SonarQube installation. That documentation that I will share with you that you have to do. And there is one submission project that would be given to you after Jenkins. So you can start with that submission project because it will use other configuration management tool knowledge to be implemented. So from here, I'm going to share the submission project so that with the pace of the class, we are going to do that. After this Jenkins, obviously I will jump into configuration management tool Ansible. So Ansible again is a very powerful configuration management tool, which has a push-based architecture, which is agentless architecture. So here we are going to learn what is static inventory, what is dynamic inventory, why dynamic inventories are scripts. Again, script is coming picture, or dynamic inventory, it's a code. So you have to understand the importance of having or learning, right, shell scripting or Python. And then how to do provisioning using Ansible. For example, you want to set up infrastructure. So basically you need a network, and inside that network you need subnets, and inside subnet you need instances or VM. So how you are going to do that? That's the important thing. Always Ansible is capable of that, because Ansible has a rich set of library. For you, coding become less, only defining a DSL is important, which is declarative in nature. Means just you put this is the module, and this module will create EC2 instance. A typical example of if I take playbook project, this project if I open, right, you have to learn how to basically define this kind of structure, how to write it. So if you see, I'm using an apt module, and this apt module is doing nothing but trying to install Apache in a very remote machine. And this simple set of code, if I run as a playbook and define in my inventory 100 machine, this simple set of code is going to install a web server in all those 100 machines. So this is what we are going to do in lab. We are going to create that situation, and we are going to see our installation out happening out there in those remote machine, and we'll go check the service. We will open a browser, and using the you can say URL in the port, we are going to access whether it's installed or not. So this is how we are going to do. And even the provisioning lab that I'm going to do will do instance spawning up in the instance automated way. Security groups would be created into AWS account, right, in an automated way. This is what we are going to do and learn, right, in this particular Ansible as a configuration management tool. We are also teaching Chef, which is a pull-based configuration management tool. Things are very similar, but here the approach is pull. Obviously, when I say pull, there would be clients on the worker side. And in Ansible, there are no clients on the worker. Or worker means where the actual heavy lifting happens. These are the machine where your deployments are going to happen. Okay. In similar way, another configuration management tool is Terraform. And in Terraform, we are going to learn how to basically, again, do those spawning of instance. So there are various aspects that we have to understand. So first of all, fundamental knowledge of how Terraform thought process is. Like, what is view creation? Means view creation is your thought. Means you want an infrastructure. This is thought, which is not actually really existing. And then you write infrastructure code, which is your desired state. Means you bring your thought into a code, and then using that code, you are converting into real world. And remember, your view may change. In the next iteration, you are going to add or delete something in your view. And then again, you will change your desired state. And when it is run, it will convert into real world. So this is what we have to learn. So installation of Terraform, right? How to run as a Terraform user, basically in your AWS account. And then you have to understand how to write this main.tf file, how it is important, what are providers and what are resources. And everything is again a game of plugins, understanding AWS as a resource, Azure as a resource, AWS instance is the module, which is a sub part of this provider. And this AWS instance is going to create an instance, right, in an automated manner into your AWS account. So this all we are going to do, and there is one submission lab for Terraform where you have to create your VPC and everything in a modular way. So this is again a part of our Terraform lab. Okay. So after learning Terraform, you are going to learn basically this Docker. Basically, there is a Docker lab, Docker documentation. So you are going to do all these multiple labs. So Docker has been planned in that way. First, you have to understand what is thick virtualization, thin virtualization, difference between thick and thin. For example, the VMs you are using are thick, but again, there is thin virtualization. And thin virtualization is what? Thin virtualization are nothing but Docker-like stuff, which is basically giving you a image, a very basic image, a base image, which is very light. Over that, you do some development and create an image out of it again and run as a container. So we have to understand first how to use command, administrative command knowledge plus development command knowledge in our Docker Lab 1, right? So where we will understand various commands to run, right? We will learn Docker inspect command, Docker network command. Then we also learn about some various networking aspect, like how are different networks defined? What is bridge? What is overlay network? What is MAC VLAN network? What is none? What is hosted? These are various things we are going to talk in lab 1, where you are familiar with Docker commands and should be capable of working. And when you jump to Docker lab 2, basically you are going to learn about ingressing, that is like volume mapping and port mapping, and how to log in inside this and check whether your Nginx has been running there or not, and how you can change in outside. Basically it is like getting privilege access of a container and doing some stuff from your remote machine. So this is one, again, a basic lab where you are going to understand how you can spun up container and use that right created container and do some activity over that. Then Docker Compose lab, Docker File lab. So in Docker File lab, you're going to create your own image. So what is Docker file? How to create a Docker file? How to create an image locally? This is again this important lab. And then there is a Docker Compose lab. In this Docker Compose lab, you will understand how different two containers can interact with each other, how to set up binding and right make them communicate with each other. And we are not included Docker Swarm because we are going to learn Kubernetes. And again, this is very important lab again, where when you create an image, how to make that image, how to change something in that image, which should be a development work or which should be an operational stuff that you have done an image, and that image need to be tested and then basically placed into the production. So obviously there is a life cycle. In that, developer will do some development, make some changes, then commit that Docker image to Docker hub or Git or whatever, and then someone tester will pull that image, do some testing over it. If it looks good, it will say, yeah, it is ready to be get deployed. So obviously we need to understand how to make changes in container, how to commit those changes and create a new image, and how to push to your Docker Hub account. So we are going to create a Docker Hub account, and then we are going to push our Docker artifacts into that. It's very similar in AWS when we talk about ECR. So it is a container registry, and we create our container and put our registry there. So anyone can use ECR to download that in image and start working on that. That is nothing but a runnable application. Okay, so this is what this lab talks about, and then we have Kubernetes. And Kubernetes is again an important thing. Uh, Basically, it's a nothing. It's not like a tool or something that we treat. It's basically a platform which manages nothing but containers, like Docker thing, right? To manage them, we have a platform, and it is again a part of Open Container Initiative. Though Kubernetes has come before Open Container Initiative has come, but there are certain guidelines, right, which we need to understand. So for us, important is first how to do that installation of. So we will learn this Minikube based installation, and we'll set up our Kubernetes in our environment, and we'll see all different components and knowledge about master components and worker components. So master component means what is API server, okay, what is scheduler, what is controller, what they do, why they meant for, from where the request will come, and how this API parser is going to take that request and parse it and place it into scheduler and a controller. So what database it use, okay, so by CoreOS it uses that database, how to how it store that passed value in that database. Basically it is not something like an RDS, it is a cache database, right, key value store. In that it will store, and scheduler will read from that and then ship whatever user has requested inside your actual cluster of worker environment, which is nothing but a cluster of VM. In that it will spawn those container, or you can say pods, and these pods are nothing but containers of multiple containers inside it. So pod is a logical unit inside multiple containers can run. And but that definition of containers are written into the user input, which we call as a pod. A request could be a command line based request, or it could be a YAML request. It can be done using a graphical interface also, from command line also. So this is what during installation, right, we will understand, and then we are going to do some labs. So labs are also planned in that way. First, we need to understand how to deploy a basic containerized web application, so that you are familiar how I can create a Docker image, and that image I will actually store in some registry, and using Kubernetes I will set up into one environment, and then I can upscale and downscale it. Obviously Kubernetes has meant for that, for example, service discovery, self-healing, and high availability, and security would be the aspect of each and every tool, right? So these are the main idea behind having Kubernetes. And then our stateless application, so where we will be launching a PHP application, and that would nothing needs an RDS instance. Okay, we can use Redis or we can use MySQL basically, but since it is a stateless, we are going to use a Redis component. And similar stateful application lab can be done also, that I will also show you. So this will give you an entire picture how actually when you go or land up into organization, when you walk into a stateless or stateful application, what all you need to know. Okay, so I talked about all this, and there is one more tool that we are going to learn, which is nothing but Grafana, which is a log management tool. And in this log management tool, we are going to understand how we are going to take input of logs and plot a meaningful graph out of it. So obviously the concept is there is a data lake. From data lake, we can consume different types of data. It could be a financial data, application data, and there would be a component in between, which is nothing but what messenger, data messenger. And this data messenger reads those data, structure it, beautify it, and store into some data resources. And through these data resources, we can plot graph attaching to tools like this, like Kibana, Grafana, right? Many such log management tool, Metabase, there are various tools, and we have picked Grafana to learn how to set up alerting, how to plot graphs out of it. So these all various tools that you are going to learn. So if you see, I'm going to cover entire continuous delivery pipeline in a single project at the end of the project that we are going to do with a lot of hands-on exercises. I'm done for this demo. I hope you had taken something out of this session, a meaningful information about DevOps, definition of DevOps from this session. Any queries or question, I'm happy to entertain you. Yeah. So I want moderator to pitch in if there are any questions. So I'm not able to see what you're writing. Okay, application and system using logs data. Yes, obviously, Mr. Gaikwad, you are right. So obviously, application can also generate data. Systems can also generate data. If you know about a daemon called container daemon, right? This is an inbuilt tool which actually gathers all those data. Similarly, there are file bits, metric bits, which can be installed in a certain machine, which will capture those data and send to a particular location through which we can message that data and store in some, you can say, resource like Prometheus, MySQL, Oracle, any data RDS data source. AWS CloudWatch logs to monitor application system log using data. Yes, this is a CloudWatch is AWS native service. Through CloudWatch also we can write plot data and integrate CloudWatch logs to Kibana also to plot graph separately. So this kind of setups are there. Yes. Any more question, guys? Can you please explain how these tools are internally related to each other? Yes. For example, if I want to do compilation of a code automated way, first of all, I need a continuous build tool, that is Jenkins. And yes, Jenkins is the tool that I'm going to install. After that, I will create a job in which I need to take a code from somewhere. So obviously, I need a code repository or knowledge of some, you can say, where I will store my code. It could be SVN, it could be Git. So obviously, I will define that repo. So this continuous build system will consume that code. So in an automated manner. So we can define a hook in Git, or we can define a configuration in Jenkins called Polesium to poll the repository frequently whenever a commit is made. So कोड आया, कोड क्या था, रॉ है, ह्यूमन रीडेबल कोड है, उसको कन्वर्ट करना है बाइट कोड में. तो उसको बाइट कोड में कन्वर्ट करने के लिए आई नीड अ बिल्ड टूल. सो आई हैव टू इंटीग्रेट माय जेंकिंस विद अ बिल्ड टूल. It could be Maven, Gradle, whatever. So I need, and somewhere Maven should be installed or Gradle should be installed. Now, since I am doing packaging, so obviously I need a build tool again to do that. But once these artifacts are builded, so this artifact need to be stored somewhere, so that every time you build, all this history should be maintained. So you do what? You integrate with a artifact repository server like Nexus, Sonar. And you also need these tools for quality checks, also vulnerability checks, security checks, which this tool are capable. So you integrate your Jenkins with those tools. And as per the report from those tools, which we set as a quality gates. So if this quality gates passes the quality gates check, you go ahead for further deployment, maybe in test environment deployment. And if functional test looks good, then you say, okay, let's do one UAT round of testing also. If it looks good, your actual, you can say, code freeze things happen, and you do a release build. And then again, in a commit in a release branch of the repo, again trigger everything. And in that way, you do again a regression testing suite is executed, and you are ready to deploy that final artifact to the production. So this various thing, when I'm talking about deployments, so deployment need configuration management tool. So Jenkins is generating artifact, then I can integrate artifact repository with Ansible or Chef or Terraform to use those artifacts and deploy into right n number of servers. So this is how right these are interrelated. Okay, what is the basic requirement to learn DevOps? I would say if you have spent some amount of time in IT industry, you are already right prepared for it. And if you're a fresher, it is a good time to start your career with. So I would say entry point is scripting, learn scripting and tools, and understand the concept of how to do entire integrations, right? Or creating a continuous delivery pipeline, learning various tools. So this is what you have to. So prerequisite, I would say in terms willingness to learn is the first prerequisite. Second thing, if you are much aware of Unix environment, you are very good. If you're not, I am here to make you right workable in Unix environment also. The fees thing would be communicated by Ethans Mangesh. So you can talk to them. So they will guide you on the terms of fees and charges. It's chargeable for custom services. Since we are using AWS free tier, and my labs are planned in that way, we are going to use T2 micro machine where you have to, there is no payment that you have to do right for AWS learning. There are certain labs where we are going to use T2 small, but again for learning tier, there you can waive off the fees charge multiple times, but there is a no case in such way you will be charged. So don't worry about fees and everything. So we will be using free tier to learn, and we will use certain features also for certain labs where they will charge, but we will get it waived off. Don't worry about this. So duration of course is 2.5 months specifically, but it goes for 3 months. Yes, sessions would be recorded. Already I have multiple recordings already done because of this right Corona stuff, that I am taking my batches online, and I have you can say recordings for each and every topic currently with me. Okay, anything else? Projects for presenting in job. Yeah, so obviously the submission job, you can always write put into your profiles or resume. There is one more basically job which is related to Ansible Jenkins project that you can inline, and a very nice way of doing things nowadays is what आप अपना रेपो बनाते हो गिटहब में, और उस पे आपके सारे प्रोजेक्ट्स इनलाइन कर देते हो जो आपने किए हैं. Or someone looks into those projects that you have done using Ansible, using Jenkins, using everything, it gives a very good resume look, and they understand that you have done all this because this all with your name and you can explain them. Yes, your chances becomes bright. So yes, most of our labs can be are presentable, and few of are very industry specific example for Jenkins submission project, master slave part, and also Kubernetes labs, which can be right put in resume. And I will guide you. I will share with you very you can say DevOps resume that I have interviewed people, right? And I will share with you, and I can help you in forming such resume also. Don't worry about that. So Faman, so Faman, any question, query? I see you said hi only, right? So duration, of course, I already told you. It is 3 months. Market, it takes 3 months. Timing would be from 2 to 5, and the course is going to start from coming Sunday. It would be happen on Saturdays and Sunday, and timing is 2 to 5 p.m. So yes, very good question. There are many tools emerging nowadays. First of all, you have to understand technology changes every 3 years. but doesn't mean that you are going to change, right? So if you learn one provisioning tool like Terraform, your knowledge is intact. Whatever tool will come, actually they are going to do in similar lines. So don't worry about that. Your attitude should be learning. And if you know these concepts and idea, each tool would be dependent upon same concept and idea. Only DSLs may change. For example, for Terraform, you should be aware of HashiCorp language. For Ansible, you should be aware of YAML, right? For Chef, you should be little much aware. And remember, these DSLs are only templates. And if you understand your templates, you can do. You don't need to code much because already modules are written for you. So the main coding part is always abstracted while learning tool. So tool is meant for that. It makes you, right, easy to use. Basically, if a tool which is not easy to use and there is a lot of development learning, then that tool is not good. I will tell that. So there is one for one, or the possibility that new tools for technology will replace the tools that we are learning. If you see, Ansible is not going to go now. Terraform again is a modern tool. Is also not going to do. Ansible is presently present 33% in the market. It has already beaten Chef, Puppet. So therefore, we had not taken much stress on Puppet. So we are using learning only Chef, which is, right, old tool, but most of the organization might use. But Ansible, Terraform are the modern tools. Therefore, we had included in the course. Okay. What are the automation? Jenkins is an automation tool. Maven is an automation tool. Ansible is an automation tool. Terraform, Docker, Kubernetes, all these are automation tools. So this video recording it would be shared by moderators, not with me. I am not having this recording. Deshpande asked, if you are asking in fear whether scripting knowledge is required, so it's good to have that fear, I would say. But yes, you have to learn. This is my experience that is talking actually. If you see, if you land up into any DevOps job, maybe you are working as a release build engineer with the tag of DevOps engineer. And someday, one repository came with some script which is doing or changing the release versioning. If you're not aware of that script, how you are going to manage that? So somehow here and there, the scripting knowledge would come in picture. So yes, it is a good time to upskill there and be confident. So this is what I would say, Mr. Deshpande. Yeah. Yeah, it will be weekend batches, not weekdays batches. Yeah, so I use Dropbox to share whatever the documents I have shared. So with every lecture before starting of that topic, I will share entire folder with you, our Dropbox, where you can easily download entire document with you. Any specific? No. Laptop would be good if I have memory of 4 GB and above, because all the heavy lifting will happen on the AWS account. So yes, machine requirement is very important. Without laptop, you cannot do anything. Machine is there. RAM could be limited to 4 GB, right? So there is no problem in that, because all our labs would be happen on the AWS environment. So yeah, I answered that. Tell me about yourself. Okay, my name is Deepak Singh. I have 15 years of IT experience. I have worked with Reliance Communication, Redmi, which is Optiva now. I work with Persistent Systems for Yahoo ODC. I work for Pomatic. I work for Sama. I work for Volkswagen. So this is a various IT company I have worked for. And currently, I'm working as a technology expert, as an architect. Yeah. Weekends. So in sessions, if you want to write, we have we are using a communicated, you can say channel like Zoom generally. In that, you would be putting up your questions, right? You would be practicing with me. I will ask you to share your session in case if you are facing any installation problem. I can guide you. So this is what I do basically. So don't worry about that. So you will not feel challenges in terms of executing your lab from remote. Yes, I'm going to use AWS EC2 instances, EC2 compute instances. We will be using Ubuntu, we will be using Red Hat, we will be using Amazon AMI. So choice is yours. So I will not restrict anyone. But yes, our installation should happen on this environment, Unix environment. Yes, Ratnagar, we are going to use Unix server. No, morning batch is still in right packed. So basically already it is going on. I don't have free slot in morning. So years of experience in DevOps, if you're asking for yourself, right, don't put more than 2 to 3 years, right? And everyone, right, in the Indian market, even, right, has not experienced more than 5 years or 6 years, basically, I would say. Okay. So again, it is not important. I would say each organization is migrating. Most of the organization are converting their philosophy, right, in some way to implement DevOps because of its benefits. So most of engineers in India, in Indian market, would have not much experience than 4 to 5 years. But anyway, it is not about see DevOps process knowledge is not much different than Agile. If you are working in an organization earlier and you are working continuous integration delivery and using various tools, then you are very much compatible, right? Like you're working on DevOps. So for Jenkins, I would say yes, Chinmay, you need some scripting knowledge. Why? For example, in Jenkins, there is in job there is one more feature called executing bash console, right? Through which certain time you need to automate or write certain script in that to do some activity. Even scriptive Jenkins, if you write a scriptive job, sometimes you have to learn the knowledge of scripting will help you. For example, for pipeline job, we are going to use basically we are going to use a Jenkins file, which is nothing but a Groovy script. In some way, yes, requirement is there. In Ansible, for dynamic inventory, yes, we need scripting knowledge. And I'm saying scripting knowledge means if you know shell script very good, you can learn any other scripting language. There is no much challenge. That's what I would say. So yes, each and every tool somewhere or other way will need some, right, scripting. Yes, Ansible needs it, and Jenkins also needs it. And see, first of all, it doesn't mean that you have to be very proficient in scripting. You should be capable of making amendments, and in this process you will learn sometime a lot about it. जब कोई requirement आता है, तो अगर आपको कुछ भी नहीं आता, but अगर आप उस पे jump कर जाते हो, तो you learn that, right? And if you have a good background, आपको पहले से पता है कि भाई ये कैसे होता है, then, right, nothing like it will help you a lot. So don't fear away, right, from learning scripting or think that would be an hindrance in your learning process. So there is one good question which says, important aspect, do organizations put weightage on this feature? Not sure if it is related to DevOps, but just wanted to ask. Obviously, right, there are weightages. If you go for any DevOps interview, I would say the very first round or up to second round, they will more grill you on Unix commands and scripting knowledge, and then they will jump into your tools part. So yes, they have much weightage. Typical in my organization, how we conduct interview, right? First, we watch whether the person is good in right understanding continuous integration delivery from any tool. Though we have requirement for a different tool. For example, you have not heard about that tool, which is a continuous build system called Concurs, which is a command line integration tool. But if a person who has a good knowledge of Jenkins and know about how to implement, we are happy to, right, take that guy and, right, are interested in. So we don't need whether he has that tool knowledge that we are having. Second thing, we also judge the candidate using some scripting exercises. We give them to write some basic scripting exercises to be done. If he completes it, then there is a lab interview also. So many organizations have different approach, but you will see this is what they are going to do. So different interview platforms are coming up and organizations are using that. So there would be scripting check, there would be domain level knowledge check, so different kind of aspects are there, right? If I'm not wrong, then developer, any language and DevOps is today. Yes, yes, too. Developer could be a DevOps developer. For example, developer need a core skills of programming. So programming, maybe in Go language or Java language, C language, is forte, but he also have aware of all the DevOps thing. So he know what is continuous integration delivery and use those tools capable of right doing other stuff. So obviously, developer with this salt of right DevOps knowledge would be very you can say need in the market. Right, he would be right demanded in the market. So a developer without DevOps knowledge, right, and a developer with the DevOps knowledge. So timing, I already told you, it's 2 to 5. GitHub experience is just work as a repository. Yeah, yes. So basically, if you know about them, it has nothing to do with, but some or other way in continuous integration, you will see your knowledge will help you out in your work environment. If you know that, so it will become easier for you to do anything on Git in your organization. So various roles and designation. For example, I am a DevOps technology expert, an architect for solutioning, right? This is my profile, right, in my DevOps engineering team. So I am part of a cloud DevOps engineering team, and I am working as a solution architect out there. So there could be a developer, solution engineer, DevOps engineer, developer, software engineer, test, DevOps engineer, DevOps. These are various kind of right roles. So operations, DevOps engineer, operations, DevOps engineer. I have seen a role called DevOps engineer Ansible also, specific to Ansible knowledge. So there could be various right designation decided by companies. So Shant is saying having 10 plus year of IT experience in different technologies and 3 years of yes, you can say that. Yeah. Yes, I generally have a good formatted CVs. I have taken right those I have interviewed, and what I found very good DevOps engineering resume I have with me. I share them. Even I guide in terms of changing some punchlines which you write in your resume. So how it should look like. I guide you in terms of what tools you should initially put, and in that way, right, I definitely guide each and every person as per their need. So yes, definitely. This is a forum where many students join in, and requirements also we get from students also. And I have tutored, you can say, director level students, which has come. I know many folks from Atos who are working as a entire managing their entire DevOps as a director. So most of the requirements when I come to me, I pass to students, and there is a good relationship with the students also, and I have a lot of groups through which if they have there any requirement, I definitely help the needy ones, and right also pass all those requirements to the group. So career path could be see there could be an operations specialist, a track could be a developer track, a tester track in terms of automation. So there are various other tracks, right? So it is not limited to one of the channels only. There could be a developer consultant also, which can decide how particular organization will use to implement DevOps. So he should have various knowledge of tools and how they are can be right used, deciding how which tools will fit where, right, and the cost of using those tools. So in the many profiles right out there. I think I have taken many questions, so I will bind up here, and thanks everyone, right, for joining in.